This is BBC One for the East Midlands. Now at 10 o'clock, the BBC News with Hugh Edwards and Joe Healy.
In search of a new leader, Tory MPs have voted to dismiss Iain Duncan Smith.
The parliamentary party has spoken, the announcement has been made, and I will stand down as leader when a successor has finally been chosen.
We'll have all the latest from Westminster on a very eventful night where all the talk is of one man. Michael Howard, former Home Secretary, could be unopposed as new leader. Also tonight, footballer Rio Ferdinand has been charged with misconduct. And trapped underground for 6 days, the Russian miners have been brought to safety.
And here in the East Midlands, they're costing us £200 million. So why have the trams been delayed again? And new fines for flyposting. But are they a useful message or a useless mess?
Good evening. The Conservative Party is once again searching for a new leader. Earlier this evening, Iain Duncan Smith was rejected by Tory MPs in a vote of confidence. Tonight, events are moving rapidly and it seems increasingly likely that there'll be just one contender for the party leadership, the former Home Secretary Michael Howard. He and other senior colleagues all said how much they regretted the end of Mr. Duncan Smith's leadership. The question put to Conservative MPs was, do you have confidence in the leadership of Iain Duncan Smith? 75 of them said they did, but 90 of them did not. First tonight, with his assessment of the day's events, Mark Mardell at Conservative Central Office.
Hugh, some Conservatives will tell you tonight marks a very real turning point. The night when the party again got hungry enough, ruthless enough to get rid of a leader, not because of any ideological differences or about policy, but because they simply didn't think he was good enough. Others will tell you it's more proof that the party is addicted to plotting, is infected with a sort of madness, is in fact ungovernable. Sacked by his own MPs, rarely has a leader not even been given the chance to fight and lose a general election. The size of the vote wasn't a humiliation, but this brutal ejection from office was. Before the vote, he told Conservative members of Parliament that the last 6 weeks of rumour, plot and turmoil had been a vision of hell. He didn't say it was a hell of the party's own making.
The parliamentary party has spoken, the announcement has been made, and I will stand down as leader when a successor has finally been chosen. I will give that leader my absolute loyalty and support, whoever it is. I will not publicly choose, however, between the candidates in this forthcoming election.
With Betsy Duncan Smith and the Shadow Home Secretary both looking close to tears, he thanked his wife and turned to the future.
Most of all, my thanks to Betsy and my family, whose support in the last 2 years has been unfailing. It has been an immense honour to lead this great party and to be the first fully elected leader by the voluntary party and by the full membership. I profoundly hope that the next leader to be elected in this manner will also be the next Prime Minister. Thank you very much indeed.
All day he'd fought on doggedly, first on early morning radio. All day people would tell you it's the military spirit. He feels it's his duty. The Prime Minister's questions must have been particularly horrible. He even nodded vigorously at Labour's jibes.
Will my right honourable friend consider that backstabbing becomes a criminal offence?
Then he went on to speak in private to his MPs, admitting he'd made mistakes, some they didn't even know about. He told them they must end the bitterness that had tarnished the party for 10 years. His supporters said it was his best speech yet. It would change wavering minds. If so, not enough of them. The result came just before 7.
There voted 75 in favour of Mr. Duncan Smith's leadership of the party. There voted 90 as not confident in his leadership. I therefore announce that the motion of confidence has been defeated. By terms of our rules, Mr. Duncan Smith must now resign as leader of the Conservative Party.
A sharp intake of breath on the committee corridor, sadness from friends.
I'm also very disappointed for the rank and file of the party. They are the people that stick the envelopes and do all the canvassing and door knocking and leaflet pushing through letterboxes. They're the people that voted for Iain. and they must feel that their leader has been stolen from them by the parliamentary party.
Out of the wreckage, a strategy is unfolding, a plot, if you like. The Shadow Chancellor, Michael Howard, won't say if he's standing, but there's now a campaign of shock and awe intended to daunt any potential opponent from standing against him. First, his main rival pledged his support.
Very recently, I've had a lot of people come to me and suggest I run for the leadership. I put my name into the coming contest for the leadership. Enough to make me think I can win it. However, a long and protracted leadership contest would worsen those divisions and those faction fighting. Accordingly, I've decided not to run myself and to step aside in favour of the candidate who I think is best equipped to unify our party. I judge that to be Michael Howard.
Then three big hitters added their weight to this rolling campaign.
We clearly need now, urgently, to find a new leader, figure of authority, figure of experience, figure of competence, proven competence in senior ministerial office.
I have no doubt whatsoever that the person who fits that bill and who is now the right person to lead the Conservative Party and to gather that unity and to take us and our policy programme forward is Michael Howard.
He has always been a man to do his duty first and foremost. We urge him to run, we will support him, and we will look forward to him standing on the steps of Downing Street as the next Conservative Prime Minister. Thank you.
This has all happened very fast after Iain Duncan Smith's ejection and makes other potential candidates think very hard. Michael Ancram is sleeping on it. Sources close to Tim Yeo says he's very keen on unity and is thinking about not standing. Operation Coronation is underway. I say coronation because what the MPs want to do is avoid a long, messy election. But above all, they want to feel that they are in charge, not the party in the country. They've got a feeling that whenever the party in the country is offered two people, it chooses precisely the wrong one, the one who isn't a winner. So they want to be in charge, and that means having only one candidate, and it looks very much as though that is what is happening tonight.
All right, Mark, at Central Office, thank you. Well, Michael Howard is keeping silent tonight on any plans he has for contesting the Tory leadership. But if he emerges, maybe as the only candidate, it will be a remarkable turnaround in his political fortunes after playing such a prominent part in the troubled administration of John Major. Laura Trevelyan takes a look now at the man widely expected to be the next Conservative leader.
General election.
Only yesterday, Michael Howard was loyally backing Iain Duncan Smith, but tonight he's the man tipped to replace him. It's an extraordinary turnaround in his political fortunes. But can the man who's already tried and failed to lead his party before succeed this time?
There they sit, united in rivalry.
That's why the party want him. The debating skills and forensic intellect he's displayed as Shadow Chancellor have rattled the government. That's more than most of his colleagues have managed.
Determined to do the other down.
Michael Howard is a political survivor, serving in Margaret Thatcher and John Major's cabinets. As Home Secretary, he gained a reputation as a right-winger, introducing private prisons.
You won't have to wait very much longer.
He first stood for Tory leader in 1997 with a familiar-sounding message.
We Conservatives have to unite, rebuild, regroup and fight.
Anne Widdecombe scuppered his chances then, memorably saying he had something of the night about him. She doesn't take a word of it back, but...
That was 1997. This is 2003. There is an enormous difference between a quarrel and a feud. And as far as I'm concerned, if Mr. Howard does, and we don't yet know it's going to happen, but if he does become the duly and properly elected leader of our party, I shall support him, as I have supported all elected leaders of our party, quite regardless of whether I voted for them or not.
Rather more of an endorsement tonight in his Folkestone constituency. Party workers were thrilled as they watched the news that David Davis was giving him a clear run.
He has the experience, he's one of the big hitters within the Conservative front bench, and I think he's the man to take us forward to victory at the next general election.
Brainy, tough and battle-hardened, Michael Howard is the man the Tories are calling on in their hour of need. But can he bring back those lost voters? Laura Trevelyan, BBC News, Westminster.
Our political editor, Andrew Marr, is in Parliament tonight. Andrew, let's talk about Mr. Duncan Smith first of all. Some people were saying, some MPs, that he didn't have a prayer in this vote today. Well, he did rather well, didn't he, really?
He certainly did. As Mark Mardell said, this was not somebody who was humiliated, and I think rightly so, because after all, although his leadership of the Conservative Party has ended very brutally tonight, he was somebody whose grasp of the agenda and whose ability to move them forward on policy was much, much better than I think a lot of people had expected. He was not in any sense a stupid man or a bad leader. He was just somebody in this modern media age who couldn't quite cut through. And the Conservative Party, as you know, Hugh, exists above all to win back power. They felt he wasn't doing enough to help them get it.
Well, tonight, talk of another plot, this time a plot to get Michael Howard elected, I suppose, unopposed. Is that realistic, Andrew?
I think it is realistic. I've spoken to Tim Yeo, who is not going to stand. We know David Davis won't stand. Michael Ancram is still thinking about it, but may well not stand. This goes back to the days of the Magic Circle in the late 50s, early 60s. This is how the Tories used to do things, but they haven't done things like this since they were in Homburgs and I was in nappies. It's an extraordinary return. Having seen the feuds and the rows they've had, it may well be the sensible solution. I mean, really going back to 1990 and the deposing of Margaret Thatcher, Tories have not been able to stop feuding. That's 13 years of bloodletting. And if Michael Howard is the first Conservative leader since then to be able to call on a sort of broad coalition, an inclusive Tory shadow cabinet, a kind of Tory shadow cabinet of all the talents, then he has a kind of chance that William Hague certainly didn't have and Iain Duncan Smith certainly didn't have.
Well, if he finds himself in that position, it'll be a pretty quick turnaround, won't it, from the events of a few years ago when Mr. Howard was not exactly seen as a fashionable political figure.
Well, you never know what's round the corner, do you? I mean, he had been cast more or less into the media darkness, he'd been pushed out, and here he is back. And he's back because he is a grown-up, he is a serious politician, he may not be liked by some people, but he's got authority, and he knows how to take on the Labour Party, and that's what they've been looking for.
Andrew, we'll talk to you later in the programme. Thanks very much. Mr. Duncan Smith's relatively brief leadership of just 2 years has been marked, of course, by constant sniping from some Conservative MPs, despite his success at local elections and his widely welcomed initiatives to refresh the party's policies. Sean Leigh looks at the key moments of the Duncan Smith era.
Even before he conceded defeat, Iain Duncan Smith's local party activists in Chingford must have known it was all over for their MP. Still, they couldn't disguise their frustration and disappointment at how he'd been treated.
It's one of those things that you can only say to your volunteers, well, we work for the Conservative Party, but of course they all feel personally very badly because of Iain, because they know him, because he comes to all the local events, he's very well thought of.
Do not underestimate the determination of a quiet man.
And Chingford Tories never did, spotting his potential when they selected him as their candidate more than a decade ago. Later, his low-key, unspun image helped him become the first Tory leader elected by the members. But the Conservative establishment never entirely lost its suspicion of a man who began his career as a rebel.
The nose to the left. 3, 2, 4.
A decade ago, he was at the heart of parliamentary rebellions against his own government on Europe, the young backbencher stubbornly refusing to fall into line. But as party leader, he learnt to compromise, ending division over Europe, teaching the party to focus on public services.
He set policy groups to work, which have come up with some very interesting ideas. He maintained our position in the polls, and the signs were that he could have built on it. The party conference saw a surge, which was undermined totally by this election.
For the last 12 months, behind the public smiles, rows and divisions in party headquarters have been slowly corroding his authority. By the time of last month's party conference, he was struggling to be heard.
The quiet man is here to stay, and he's turning up the volume.
But it wasn't to be for long. A year ago, he urged Tories to unite or die. They still face that challenge, but now without Iain Duncan Smith. Sean Leigh, BBC News.
Well, what of the view tonight among party workers in solid Conservative territory? Richard Bilton is with party members in Penrith. Richard.
Hugh, yeah, this is good Tory heartland, very safe Conservative seat, but there were fears in this constituency about the whole process, lots of loyalty to Iain Duncan Smith. Now, with us, we've got three people from different levels of the party to see what they think about what's happened today. Richard Griffiths, you come here for a drink, you're a Tory voter. What do you make of what's happened?
I'm very disappointed what's happened today. I thought IDS was the man to lead us to the next election, the fourth leader of the party in 8 years. I think it set the party back 10 years.
So you're very concerned. Helen Fearon, you're from the local Conservative Association. Those fears were apparent in the town today. What do you make of what's happened? Are you worried about the process?
Well, of course, there has been frustration, and there's been a lot of that amongst the membership. But this is the first time that this process has actually been used for selecting the leader, and it can be changed if it's now felt that it's not right. The process has been used, it could be changed.
John Thompson, now you are the chairman of the local Conservative group on the District Council. Looking to the future, Michael Howard, very much a name in the frame this evening. Do you think he could be a good leader for you?
Michael's a fine Conservative, and if elected, he will make a fine leader. And it probably will lead us into the next general election successfully with the policies we have in mind.
Could he win it? Is he the man you'd like?
Oh, yes. If he's elected leader, we can win it.
OK, that's great. Some of the views that we've heard here today, all day, and of course these views being expressed in Conservative clubs up and down the country, worried about what might come next for their party.
Richard in Penrith, thank you very much. And we'll have more on tonight's events at Westminster and elsewhere later in the programme. Now, some of today's other news. Personal borrowing reached a record level of £10.7 billion last month, according to new figures from the Bank of England. Mortgages accounted for nearly £9 billion of the total, prompting fears that the bank will raise interest rates when its Monetary Policy Committee meets next week.
Climbing the property ladder is getting very expensive. But that's not deterring prospective buyers at this £35 million development in Sheffield. There are 400 flats here, most have been sold, around half as rental investments. It seems we've got no qualms about borrowing more and more money to secure our little bit of luxury.
They are borrowing, 3 or 4 times joint wages in some cases. It's mortgage's fault as well. They ask you to put down a 5% deposit. And you're away basically from there.
We're borrowing more than ever. At the peak of the last borrowing binge in 1990, our total debt reached 95% of our disposable income, but we've gone way past that point now. Between us, we owe more than we earn. Debt is 120% of income. But because interest rates are so low, that debt is pretty affordable for now. Back in 1990, we were spending almost 20% of our income paying back loans and mortgages. Now it's just 13.5%. But experts say that by keeping interest rates so low, the Bank of England may have created a monster.
It's tried to persuade consumers to borrow quite a lot over the last 2 or 3 years to try and keep the economy growing, which is fine. But the problem today now is that, of course, people have become rather addicted to high levels of debt, and the Bank of England is becoming quite worried about it. If it chooses to raise interest rates, there's a danger that you get a kind of house of cards situation where things begin to collapse rather more quickly than the bank expects.
So, back in Sheffield, homeowners may think they're holding all the aces, but if rates do go up next week, they might not be feeling so flush. Jenny Scott, BBC News.
The England and Manchester United defender Rio Ferdinand has been charged with misconduct by the Football Association for missing a random drugs test. Ferdinand has now asked for a personal hearing to explain himself to the FA.
Leaving home for training today, English football's most expensive player knew what was coming. After weeks of speculation over his missed drugs test, a charge from the Football Association. At Ferdinand's recent hearing, he said he simply forgot to go for the test, but the FA are concerned that there might be more to it. The player's Manchester United colleagues and his union are firmly on his side.
He must feel better for the fact that he has had support from his colleagues, and nobody will know better than his colleagues where he's guilty of drug charges, and they've made that quite clear, that they're quite adamant that he's not.
If found guilty, Ferdinand could face a suspension or fine. That means he wouldn't be able to play for Manchester United or for England. Tonight, fans of the club said any punishment should be severe.
I think it should be severe as it gets, to be quite honest with you. And then that will send a clear message out to the people that they should take the tests as and when they're prescribed.
I'm a Manchester United supporter. I do think there's definitely got to be a reason why he didn't go for that drug test on time. I do think it should be a very harsh penalty.
Desperate to carry on playing for his club and his country, Ferdinand has already asked for another personal hearing with the Football Association. Tonight, lawyers for Manchester United and Rio Ferdinand are preparing their response to this charge, in the knowledge that if found guilty, the player could face up to 2 years out of football. Sally Nugent, BBC News, Manchester.
The IRA has issued a statement blaming the Ulster Unionist Party for the collapse of a deal to restore power sharing to Northern Ireland. It says the IRA stuck to the agreement, but others didn't. The Ulster Unionist leader, David Trimble, backed away from the deal last week, saying there was not enough detail about the weapons put out of use by the IRA. 11 Russian miners who were trapped half a mile underground for nearly 6 days have been brought to the surface alive. The rescue near the city of Rostov-on-Don came as hope for the men had been fading. From Moscow, here's Stephen Rosenberg.
Back from the dead, 11 Russian miners walk to safety. They've been trapped underground for nearly a week with no food and no contact with the outside world. Hope of them ever coming out alive had almost slipped away. One miner didn't make it, and the search continues for another. Their ordeal began last Thursday when an underground lake burst. As the icy water rose, the men scrambled into a nearby passageway, more than 2,000 feet beneath the earth, their only chance of staying alive. From a neighbouring mine, rescuers began digging a tunnel of hope, 200 feet long. Today, they broke through and found survivors. Relatives rushed to the local hospital. It was the moment they'd been praying for, the chance to be reunited with fathers and husbands, and to find out how they'd cheated death so deep underground. Among the survivors was the mine director. He'd only been in the job 3 days when he got trapped.
We were convinced we were going to die. There was no way out. So when I saw the rescuers' headlamps, I thought it was the light of God.
We only had one light between us, and that ran out. By the end, we were just groping around in the darkness.
But as these miners were being rescued, others today were dying. 5 men killed in a blast in the Russian Far East. Further proof that Russia's aging, underfunded coal mines are turning into death traps. Steve Rosenberg, BBC News, Moscow.
Firefighters are continuing to battle wildfires in Southern California. At least 18 people have died and tens of thousands have been forced to leave their homes. The fires have spread over more than 500,000 acres to the north and east of Los Angeles and south into Mexico. Firefighters are hoping that a drop in temperature will now help them contain the fires. Let's have more now in tonight's main news. Iain Duncan Smith's defeat in a vote of confidence among Tory MPs. The focus for Conservative workers is how a new leader might help them to fight and win back some of those marginal constituencies, such as Northampton South. Anita McVeigh is there.
In politics, as on funfair rides, you've sometimes got to hang on for dear life. As Iain Duncan Smith prepared for his big showdown, we asked people here in Northampton South if tonight's events would influence their votes at the next general election. After all, this is one of the most marginal seats in the UK, with a Labour majority of less than 1,000.
I was thinking of voting Tory, but if he does get pushed out tonight, I think that actually I might stick to Labour.
Somebody more charismatic may persuade those kind of marginal voters who are not quite sure where their allegiance is lies, but I'm not sure it would persuade me.
Persuading voters is the most important job for these local Conservatives. Supporters of IDS, they spent an apprehensive afternoon getting on with the bread and butter work that makes the constituency tick, and angry that personality was detracting from policies.
We should be out there selling them to the electorate and taking the fight to the Labour Party, not to ourselves.
When the news came tonight that the leader had lost the vote of confidence, there was resignation, not surprise. And of course the question, how would this affect the party's chances at the ballot box?
What's happened is happened, and really we can only go forward. I hope that we find somebody who will take us down the road and win us the next election.
I do believe now we do stand a chance. And if we all move forward and get on with it, then yes, we will have a Conservative MP in Northampton South.
This one is
It's a prize every time. Come on.
So no prize for Iain Duncan Smith tonight, but if whoever replaces him can make the Conservative Party more attractive to the electorate, then all of the ill feeling created by this may at least be forgiven, if not forgotten. Anita McVeigh, BBC News, Northampton.
And back now to Andrew Marr, who's at the Houses of Parliament. Andrew, could you talk us through the next few weeks as they're likely to pan out and address this one issue, which is that if there's just one candidate, will that candidate then be voted on by the party members after all?
Well, to take that one first, if it does end up with one candidate, then the party rules appear to say that that candidate is then elected. And we're expecting Michael Howard to make his formal declaration that he does want to stand tomorrow. So everything then really depends upon whether anybody else comes out of the woodwork. Michael Ancram, as I said earlier, is still thinking about it. How inclusive would a Michael Howard leadership be? For those who are traditionalist in their politics, they may be reassured to know that everybody's been trying to find Ken Clarke this evening to see what he thinks about it. But he's been at the football at Stamford Bridge, and his mobile phone, if he has one, has been switched off, and he's been completely uncontactable. So those are the kind of considerations going around. Can it be inclusive? Can they really stick at one candidate, or will somebody insist on there being a contest? It may be that Michael Howard, even if he was the only candidate, would like the party in the country to endorse him. That, of course, would be a slightly expensive thing to do, but it would allow him to say that he too had been chosen by the whole party.
Andrew, many thanks once again. We'll be back a little later with the latest on the day's headlines. Now it's time to join our news teams across the UK. Bye for now.
Hello there, good evening. Nottingham's £200 million tram system will be delayed by another 5 months. The project is suffering significant problems, which will hold them up until next spring. On top of all of that, as Auntie Bartram discovered, motorists are also causing them problems.
Things aren't running smoothly. The launch date has already slipped once, originally due to be next month, then it was January, and today we learned the network won't be ready until late March, April. It's because line work and street works are taking longer than predicted. Signals need adjusting, and there are difficulties with the trams gripping in the wet. On top of that, there's a headache of the four-wheeled variety. And this is at the heart of the problem. The road layouts around this part of Nottingham have changed dramatically. And at the moment, it seems, many motorists just aren't prepared to give way for the trams. In just half an hour at this junction, we spotted half a dozen drivers taking an illegal cut-through. This one, a city council truck.
It was just convenient for us at that particular time because I was in this sort of area. Instead of going all the way around to come back up to here, just nip straight through.
It's a problem they could do without, because even when they get everything else right, the trams won't get the all clear until the inspectors are satisfied Nottingham is ready for them.
Absolutely, and the Her Majesty's Railway Inspectorate will make a decision based on what Nottingham people are doing, and if they're still driving the one-way streets or turning right where they can't, then that will actually delay the project.
The signs could hardly be clearer, and those caught doing this face prosecution. And even more leaflets will be sent out to hammer home the message. Anthony Bartram, East Midlands Today, Nottingham.
A man with severe disabilities is recovering after he was mugged for his car keys and then run over by the thieves who'd stolen his car. The attack happened in the Top Valley area of Nottingham. As Jane Haddon reports, his neighbours are horrified.
The 35-year-old, who has cerebral palsy, was attacked outside his home on Penlick Walk yesterday morning. He was thrown to the ground, and as his attackers sped off, they ran him over. It's not the first time he's been targeted, and people living here are outraged it's happened again.
He's disabled. He couldn't defend himself if he wanted to, you know what I mean? It's degrading. It's really cruel.
This is a community that's living in fear. Yesterday's attack was just a particularly savage example of what residents say amounts to an almost daily intimidation, and they're taking measures to keep themselves safe. Almost every house here has got a high fence like this. Some residents don't trust them to keep the intruders out. Many people here wouldn't talk on camera, scared they'd be next on the muggers' hit list.
She went to a young girl that lived a couple of doors down, and she's frightened. She saw what happened, but she's frightened. And I don't blame people for being frightened, really, for what's happening, because I think it's immoral. what's happening round the area anyway.
The victim of yesterday's attack has left this street to stay with friends. He says he'll never return. Meanwhile, those who remain are battening down the hatches. Jane Haddon, East Midlands Today, Top Valley in Nottingham.
A girl of 14 who went missing with a man of 26 is back at home tonight. Kirsty Blakey is now with her family in Lincoln. She went into a police station in Torquay in the early hours of this morning, along with John Marshall, a neighbour. The pair started a nationwide police search after going missing last week. Mr Marshall has been arrested and was due to be questioned by police in Lincoln.
I feel a lot better now that I'm home, but I do feel quite bad because I know how much people have been worrying about me and that. So I do feel quite bad.
The owners of a nightclub have been fined for putting up illegal fly posters. In the first prosecution of its kind in Leicester, Lounge 1 was ordered to pay £400 in fines and costs. As this exclusive CCTV footage shows, fly posting is rife. It's happening in all our cities. Teams stick up the posters, oblivious to the mess they cause. Well, now, in Leicester, the City Council is fighting back. They've warned more prosecutions could follow. Andy Mayer joined one clean-up squad as they blasted their way across the city.
For Alan, this is a full-time job. Every day blasting off hundreds of posters. But is it worth it?
I think it should just be a clean environment, really. The fly posters, there's a place for them, and this isn't the right place for them, really.
When people see it, they don't want to come here. It just makes it really bad.
They should charge the guys who are doing the promotions. They should be charged for the cleanings and everything.
I think it makes the place look very untidy. And the people that put them up, well, should know better. You've got probably 10 sets of traffic lights, 4 or 5 boards per set. That's 50 boards within space of 300-400 yards, and it looks just a mess. An eyesore.
So where do they all come from? Most posters advertise new albums and nightclubs. But the problems got so bad the City Council's decided to get tough.
The magistrates today have supported our campaign to clean up Leicester and remove the scourge of fly posting. The City Council spends thousands removing fly posts every year. Now we won't have to pass that cost on to the citizens of Leicester. We're going to carry on prosecuting people with the support of the magistrates to finally get this situation under control.
So with the council turning up the pressure, there may be more prosecutions in the pipeline. Andy Mayer, East Midlands Today, Leicester.
And on to tonight's football results from the Carling Cup third round. Aston Villa 1, Leicester City 0. Chelsea 4, Notts County 2. Nottingham Forest 2, Portsmouth 4 after extra time. And a quick look now at the weather forecast. 1 or 2 showers are possible tonight, but it will eventually become dry by dawn. Temperatures tonight falling to lows of 3 Celsius. Tomorrow will start dry, but rain will spread from the southwest and it will be heavy at times. It'll feel chilly, temperatures reaching 9 Celsius. That's the way it's looking here. Let's rejoin Hugh. Good night.
And the main news tonight, the Conservative Party is once again searching for a new leader after Iain Duncan Smith was rejected in a ballot of Tory MPs. 90 declared no confidence in him as leader, 75 said they did have confidence. He'll continue as leader until a successor is appointed. The favourite at the moment is the former Home Secretary Michael Howard. He has yet to declare, but there are indications tonight that he may be the only candidate. And the England and Manchester United defender Rio Ferdinand has been charged with misconduct by the FA. Newsnight is getting underway over on BBC Two, but from all of us on the 10 o'clock team, good night.
Good evening to you. Very autumnal, very changeable weather, I think, for all of us in the next few days. We've had a couple of weather fronts across us today. One now out in the North Sea, another straddling the centre of the country. Large area of cloud out there on the Atlantic. That's for tomorrow. That'll be bringing wind and rain. Another one moving out from the United States. That's for the weekend. That will also be bringing wind and rain. Here's tomorrow's area of low pressure down to the southwest of us, with those fronts pushing up from the south, I should say Friday rather than tomorrow, and again a repeat performance for Sunday with a new area of low pressure just to the north of us. So we started off pretty wet in many parts. That rain moved out into the North Sea. We've recently had another band of rain edging across from the west. That too will continue to fizzle during the course of the night, and just lurking behind me you can see the first signs of the next area of rain just coming into that southwestern tip of Ireland. Now during the rest of the night, most of the rain that we have across the country will fade away. A few showers left across and around coast. The main theme about tonight is it's going to be a cold night in the north. There'll be some frost around, and we're also going to have some patchy fog. So put the two together and you could well have some nasty slippery roads and pavements in the morning. Somewhat less cold in the south. Now we pick up that rain. It's going to be pushing in during tonight into tomorrow, moving gradually up across the country and then probably grinding to a halt through these central parts before it eventually swings away southeastwards in a day or so's time. So we start off with that fog in northern parts in the morning. That will clear away. It may take quite a long time to clear from parts of Scotland, but once it's gone, for Scotland and the far north of England, sunshine and a few showers. Early on, that rain will be coming into southern Ireland, into the far southwest, and it'll be moving steadily northeastwards during the course of the day, eventually getting to a good part of England and Wales, with the exception of the border counties, and perhaps too into Northern Ireland. And of course, as the wind freshens and the rain comes along, don't expect it to feel particularly mild, even though temperatures might eventually, by the end of the day, reach 11 degrees or so. And then on Friday, as that front grinds to a halt, some more rain to come through these central parts of the country. North of it, it's a brighter story with some sunshine and a few showers. South of it too, it's a brighter picture with some sunshine and a few showers. But there, the showers could be quite heavy with thunder mixed in for good measure. And we're going to find the winds picking up too. There could well be some gales around some of those western coasts. On Saturday, that rain band swings away, eventually clears the country. Then we're left with just a few showers. Doesn't last all that long, because before the day's out, another batch of wet and windy weather approaching from the southwest. And that rain will move across the country, probably hanging far across the southeastern corner, well into Sunday. A very good evening to you.